Welcome to the grand final of this year's Amateur World Schools Debating Championship. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'll be your chair for this round. Pronounce him, but would highly prefer that you address us as a panel. Judging with me, final our two panels. Please also introduce yourselves in the order it is stated in the tab.
Hi everyone, my name is Ankit, no gender preference, and good luck for the debate as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Umair, one of the analysts for this round. Best of luck. You're here.
Hi, my name is Wayne. Good luck everyone, and congratulations for making it thus far.
Thank you. Before we start, couple of reminders. First, please don't forget to state your PI preferences before speeches. Secondly, please don't forget to time yourselves. Finally, I highly encourage debaters to raise and accept PIs to make the debate more engaging. Let's start. Let's now call on the first speaker from the proposition side. Started with the please.
I believe that is me. Sorry, give me a sec to set up my timer. My pronouns are she, her, and I'll take my POIs verbally, please. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Omelas is a supposedly called utopian world where everything is perfect, which then looks like where everyone is able to receive things like no crime within our world, with things like, let's say, no sorrow existing, and things like no and things like where they're basically living this ideally perfect world. We tell you that they in this world of Omelas, they're basically majority of the citizens living within this world are most likely then going to acknowledge the fact that in this world, for it to function and it to run, there's going to be a child suffering because of it. Now we then tell you that in this world, everyone is then going to accept it because their city's joy depends on this child's suffering. Most citizens then either rationalize it and life goes on. So in this world, we then assume that there is no absolute political structure, no dissent, no rebellion, and no tools for systematic change. The only form of political we see within this world is then most likely going to be the form of protesting and having the ability to leave and walk away. So that is to say, and that means that staying in Omelas doesn't lead to reform, it leads to a moral numbness and a lot of complicity within that world. We now give you our characterization of Omelas from proposition. So it is a superficial utopia world that is then built on a lot of things like hidden suffering. So while Omelas then appears to be like perfect with things like no war, no disease, no poverty, no unhappiness, etc., this perfection is very fragile and conditional. That is to say that it depends completely and entirely on the continued extreme suffering of one innocent child. Was that a POI here? I'll continue. So this is not a natural accident. It is a deliberate institutional injustice. So that means Omelas is not a utopia. It is a moral illusion that hides its darkness beneath all this happiness and all this beauty that they so-called want to create. Society built on a lot of this systematic dehumanization is that the child is not just suffering, it is intentionally then neglected. It's stripped of humanity and treated as a tool for a lot of other people's benefit. So citizens are told that any act of kindness in that case is then towards the child would destroy the city. So this is not then utilitarianism. This is then, we think, a sacrifice without consent, with torture without end and normalized cruelty within this world. So Omelas then is a society that has accepted the idea that one life is clearly disposable and that suffering is acceptable as long as it is hidden. We then tell you that in Omelas, our population condition is into moral apathy, meaning that every citizen learns the truth upon reaching adulthood, and most choose to then rationalize it, ignore it, and continue benefiting from this world. There is no, as said before, political process, no rebellion, and no effort to then change the system, as Omelas is a society of moral compromise where comfort is chosen over conscience and silence is chosen over justice. We then give you our key stakeholders and how these people within this world are then being affected. We have 5 stakeholders of this debate: the child, the citizens who stay, those who walk away, the society of Omelas in general, and the future generations. So first of all, we give you the child. So they are clearly most directly affected within this scenario because their suffering is the foundation of the city's happiness within the first place. So that is to say that if people then walk away, the child's condition does not change. If people stay and do nothing, they then perpetuate the injustice. And if people stay and act, which is opposition's case, the child might possibly maybe be helped. Now, the second are then the citizens who stay, which then benefit from the system, where they receive these tools of being happy, no crime, none of that. So they must then live with the moral burden of knowing about the child and have to suppress this empathy of keeping to enjoy their lives, which this psychology and moral integrity is then at massive stake and risk. The third stakeholders we then see is those who then choose to walk away. So they then lose this material comfort and social connection, where things like disease, sorrow, crimes then come back into life, possibly, and they gain this moral clarity of peace of mind. They then represent the driven process of refusal and denial that this is moral to stand in the first place. Now, where they go, we don't know because they face an uncertain future within the desert. Now, the society of Omelas, now its existence depends on everyone agreeing to the system within the first place. So that means if enough people walk away or rebel, the system might then collapse. Now, walking away might destabilize the norm of creating change indirectly. Now, our fifth stakeholder we give you today is then the future generations. So who will be born into this system and face a lot of these moral dilemma that everyone else is experiencing within the society of Omelas currently. So their worldwide view then depends on whether the system actually continues or whether or not someone decides and a majority decides to challenge this current action. The actions taken today then set the ethical precedent for like tomorrow and the outcome of the whole generation in general. Now, before I continue, are there any POIs? 3, 2, 1.
Right?
Yes.
If you're walking away, don't you think the child's sacrifice will be in vain?
No, because what we tell you is that this child never even had a say on whether or not they actually wanted to be in that position in the first place. If you think about it, that child would never have wanted to put themselves in that position. And if they were never in that position within the first place, none of this suffering would have happened in general. Third speaker will elaborate on that for me. So now I'll move on to my arguments. My first argument of today is that complicity in injustice undermines a lot of moral integrity. So that means, and that is to say, that every citizen of Omelas already knows of the child's existence. And by choosing to stay, they then tactically approve of this injustice within the first place. Now, a lot of moral individuals, then we tell you, cannot actually truly live ethical lives while trying to benefit from a system that tortures a child. So walking away is then a refusal to be conflicted, because that means, and that is to say, that it is an act of moral clarity and personal responsibility. Now, we then tell you that the impact and why this is so important is because the upholding of the individual's integrity is more important than passive comfort, and it sets a standard that happiness must not come at the cost of cruelty. We then tell you, secondly, we bring to you that ethical societies must be built on justice for everyone and all, meaning all citizens, including this child. Now, a society that sacrifices one for the many may appear utopian, but is literally structurally unjust. So, true justice must be universal, not a selective or conditional. Walking away is then a symbolic rejection for this utilitarian that exists when it violates a lot of things like human rights, and it expresses a demand for a lot of systematic change. The impact then is that it affirms that no one, especially the most vulnerable, should then be treated as expendable. Now, walking away then sparks a lot of hope and reimagines a much better world within the long term, because those who walk away do not walk into oblivion. They walk toward the unknown, toward the possibility of a more just society that they may be heading to. They then become a lot of moral trailblazers, choosing a difficult but principled path over comfortable injustice. We then like to remind you one more time that this person is the most vulnerable victim of all. It's a child who is still developing, and of all people should not deserve this punishment of all people existing within that world. Now, based on what we tell you today, this is why we are so proud to stand and that we strongly agree with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, first proposition speaker. Now I'd like to call on the first opposition speaker.
So my name is Hinana Omiwa, and I will start up. My name is Hinana Omiwa. My POI preference is frivolity, and my preferred gender pronouns are she, her. Now I will move on to my speech. So before I move on to my speech, one refutation to make. They have told you walking away is choosing the path of justice. We say that one, this is not true because there is no concrete impact as to walking away. The child is not saved. Second, even if it was true, it's a selfish act because the person that walked away is now walking into oblivion. They know nothing now. And I will explain more about this in my speech. Now I will move on to my speech. Before moving on, I have some characterization and definition to make before my argument. So the child, it is clearly stated in the motion that they will never be allowed to leave the city. They are under utmost despair. They're suffering very much. And about Amelis, opposition side, government side has told you that there will be mental numbness. But we say no, there might be, but at least there is acknowledgement. They would know about the sacrifice. It is important to note here that walking away does absolutely nothing. There is no impact on the child nor society, just plain selfishness. So what does not walking away look like? It looks like we acknowledge the child's suffering. We live with it in that city. We know that there is sacrifices happening. So on the other hand, what does walking away look like? Walking away has absolutely no impact. The child cannot be saved. It is not moral clarity. It is plain selfishness. It is running away from reality, from the suffering that the child is facing. It is like just running away from the guilt that they might have to go through because they witnessed that child suffering. So look at what happens in both sides to the abused child. The motion states the child cannot leave. On government side, the child is left to suffer in the underground. Even if one person just walked away, there is nothing, no impact to the child at all. There is no good thing happening to them at all. The child will suffer. On opposition side, the child will suffer. Something happening in both sides. At least we don't run away from the truth and just forget about it later on. We know suffering is inevitable. We don't run away from the truth and live to the fullest, knowing that a child is suffering for our happiness. Why does this happen? Why do we know that the child is suffering and that this will lead to us trying to lead a better life in general? 2 steps. All the citizens, it is clearly stated in the motion that they know about the child's suffering and what kind of treatment they go through. And second, in that situation, when we don't run away, we are forced to acknowledge that a child is suffering below us in the underground. At the point in which we are living in that city where when you become an adult, everyone goes to the underground. It is a society where the sacrifice of the child is not forgotten. In the very least, it is less forgotten than people that just walked away. We don't waste the child's inevitable sacrifice. We prove that we will live more to the fullest. The impact of this is so important because the child won't be saved either way. Their suffering is still immense. We should never forget about it, about sacrifice, remembering about this. This is the least we can do and happens more on our side of the house. And this is the morally right thing to do. It is in our responsibility to stay, not run away, to acknowledge the child's suffering, to like remember it every single day and be like, maybe I should make better life choices because that child is suffering while
Yeah.
I get to live a happy life. Yes?
Is it moral in your world that you're basically promoting the idea that someone has to suffer and some cruel thing has to happen in order for your own happiness?
We say that it is not, we are not like saying that it's morally right. We are saying that the impact of like morally right wrongfulness happening on both sides. On government side, for example, government side, we say that they're running away. They're like ignoring the child. That is obviously morally bad. We proceed to say that like these people might live knowing that like the child is suffering. And this might be morally wrong, but this happens both symmetrically on both sides of the world because both of them know that the child is suffering. One decided to run away, one decided to stay, knowing about it. And because it's not like an act, walking away is not an act of like stating your opinion or anything. It's just the act of running away. So government said that standing up for what's right and like leads to moral clarity, but this has no impact on the child nor the society and is not true. It has no impact because nothing happens to the child. One person standing up cannot realistically change the whole world, the whole political system of it as they claim. The motion states that occasional people have walked away, like young and old. But at the point in which like this world hasn't changed at all, what is the uniqueness of one person, this house, leaving and walking away, running away, that they can like push? So just running away from them is just selfish. So we make the principal argument about morality and not ignoring problems in counterfactual. So the ignoring the problem, the child's suffering, will lead to the child suffering in vain. They are forgotten about. Like the government side just forgets about them because if they can escape and like find a better life for themselves out in the desert or something, then that means that they will eventually forget about the child, or at least more likely to forget than the people living in the city because they know that like a child is suffering just below them, right? The most likely is to like just forget. They did it out of selfishness, of like mental damage because they couldn't just deal with it to see a child suffering. This might sound good, but this is the important thing to stress here is that this is just ignoring the problem itself. It's not dealing with it, it's just running away. No, thank you. These are worse people. They have a worse morality on their side. This is selfishness, just saving yourself. Important thing here to note here is that there is no benefit to anyone but yourself and maybe your mental state in government side's world. So we say we are fine with benefiting off the majority because the child isn't going to be saved either way. At least we make sure that the child isn't forgotten. At least we don't ignore the problem and decide to stay. This is what we say is the most important thing here in this debate. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the first speaker from the opposition side for the speech. Now I'd like to call on second speaker from proposition.
If I have everyone's attention, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine if you were that child, chained against the wall, suffering the utmost misery a human can endure, starved, sick, and locked in the dark basement while the city almost thrives above you. In almost, everyone lives perfectly happy lives with beautiful buildings and plentiful crops, but only at the cost of your suffering. The motion today is this house will walk away, and we say yes, we would leave the city. Now I'll move on to my rebuttals. The opposition says walking away doesn't help the child directly. However, opposition misses the big picture. Walking away challenges the very system that keeps the child suffering. By staying anomalous, you agree to the city's rules, benefiting them from its happiness while the child suffers. Walking away rejects that agreement, showing the city that not everyone will accept its cruel terms. The opposition also said that walking away will not lower the child's suffering. But staying doesn't help the child either. It only makes the problem worse. By living in almost, you're enjoying the benefits of all the child's pain, like good food and safety, which keeps the system going. Staying means you're part of the problem, leading to the child's torture. Opposition also said that it is selfish for you to walk away. The opposition calls walking away selfish, but leaving almost means giving up a perfect life, beautiful buildings, and great food and no worries for the unknown and for the unknown desert. That's not a selfish choice. It is a huge sacrifice. You're trading comfort for the principle that no one should suffer for your happiness. Opposition also said that we will not waste the child's inevitable sacrifice, and we will never forget about it, and this is the morally right thing to do. The opposition claims that the child's suffering is inevitable, so staying doesn't waste it. But that's not true. It's only inevitable if we choose to keep the system going. The city tells citizens the child must suffer for their happiness, but that's a rule humans made, not a law of nature. Honoring someone means valuing them, not using their pain for your own benefit. In almost, the child is starved, sick, and chained. Its suffering isn't a noble act. It's a torture forced upon it. Now I'll move on to my arguments. Firstly, it's wrong to let a child suffer for others' happiness. The most basic reason to walk away from almost is that it's morally wrong to let an innocent child suffer just to make everyone else happy. The child is in the basement, starved, sick, and chained, living in misery every single day. No amount of beauty, wealth, or joy in almost can justify this cruelty. For example, if you saw a child being hurt on the street, you wouldn't ignore it just because it made your life. I'll take it later. You wouldn't ignore it just because it made your life easier. You'd help them. Staying in almost is like saying it's okay to hurt someone as long as you benefit, which goes against basic fairness and just like human rights. Walking away shows you refuse to be part of the system that depends on someone else's pain. It's standing for what's right, even if it means giving up your perfect life in almost. I'll take your P1 now.
So you say that it's morally wrong to keep the child in the basement, but won't the alternative where the child is saved and unleashes death and famine into the world, won't that alternative lead to more people living the same miserable life of the child?
Yeah, but the thing is that this is unjustified, right? This child, why is this child in this position to be tortured, to be in misery, right? At least when we let famine or danger into the world, this is all justified. This person murdered someone. They did something wrong and that person suffered. It's all justified, right? And this child is just innocent, right? They were just put into this position without any reason. So this is why this is much more inhumane than the alternative. Letting the child suffer goes against basic human decency. Imagine, in almost, the child is helpless, locked away, and forgotten, which, while adults enjoy feasts and laughter upstairs. Staying in the city means agreeing that's okay to ignore the pain as long as you benefit from it. Walking away just rejects this idea, showing that no one's happiness should come at the cost of a child's suffering. It chooses kindness over convenience. This suffering isn't a small trade-off. It's a lifetime of torture for one person to give luxury to thousands. This child isn't just sick for one day. It's malnourished and chained forever, with no hope of freedom. And this is just completely unjustified. On to my second argument. Staying at almost normalizes injustice and hurts society's values. If you stay in almost, you're accepting that it's just okay for some people to suffer as long as most people are happy. This sets a dangerous example for how society should work. It says it's fine to ignore the pain of a few for the benefit of many. In the real world, this kind of thinking has led to terrible things, like ignoring the rights of minorities because the majority is fine. For example, in the past, societies have accepted slavery because it made life easier for the majority, but that didn't make it right. Staying in almost normalizes the idea that one child's life is worth less than the city's happiness. Walking away rejects this idea and stands up for the principle that every person's life matters equally, no matter how small their suffering seems compared to the city's joy. Staying in almost teaches people that it's acceptable to sacrifice a few for the benefit of many. When citizens accept the child's suffering as the price of their joy, they're saying it's fine to pick and choose who gets hurt. For example, if a city decided to lock up one person in a jail cell forever to keep everyone else safe from the crime, most people would call that cruel and unfair. In almost, it's the same idea. One child's life is traded for everyone else's comfort. This normalizes the belief that some people's pain doesn't matter as much, which can spread beyond the child. Walking away says no to this mindset, showing that no one should be a scapegoat, no matter how much good it seems to bring. On to my third argument. Staying anonymous makes you part of the problem. If you stay anonymous, knowing about the child, you're agreeing to the system that keeps the child suffering. Every citizen is told the truth when they reach adulthood. So staying means you're choosing to accept the child's pain for your own happiness. This means that you're just as guilty as the city itself. For example, if a company makes clothes by forcing kids to work in dangerous factories, buying these clothes supports the harm. In Almas, enjoying the city's perfection, like its beautiful buildings, food, and happiness and everything, means you're benefiting from the child's misery. Walking away shows shows your mindset of I won't be part of this, and it shows that you'd rather face the unknown than live with the guilt of your happiness coming off of an innocent child suffering. If you live in Almas and act like everything's fine, other people, especially younger citizens, might think it's okay to accept the child's suffering too. Walking away, on the other hand, shows that it's not okay, and it might even inspire some people to question the system, or leave, or decide to walk away as well, creating a movement to end the child's suffering once and for all. So this is how it can have an impact, how walking away can have an impact or save the child from suffering. In conclusion, I have told you how we should not build our happiness on the suffering of another, how we should not normalize injustice, and how staying anonymous makes you part of the problem. Therefore, from what we have told you today, it is clear that SAD proposition should win this debate and the motion should stand. Never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the second speaker from the proposition side for the speech. Now I'd like to call in the second opposition speaker. Second opposition speaker.
Hi, I'm Satsumi, and I prepare real eyes verbally. And I will be starting my speech in in 3, 2, 1. As opposition, we believe that the act of walking away is a very irresponsible act for the citizens to take. They should at least live in that country while acknowledging the child for providing them with a good city to live in with like the sacrifice they made. So proud to oppose. I'm reading 3 things in my speech: 1, refutation; 2, points; and 3, weighing. So moving on to my refutation, I have mainly 2 refutations for today. One, they keep saying that they keep repeating their claim that it challenges the system, but they never probably recognize that why people would do that, right? But secondly, they're saying that they should change the system, but we think that this is not realistic, right? People have walked away in the past and nothing changed, and this was already said in the first speaker's speech. Moving on to my point. My point for today is making the best out of the sacrifice that the child made. Making the best out of the sacrifice that the child made. So firstly, the citizens have agreed to live in a world in which they sacrifice the children. They just abandon and leave the child underground for a better life for themselves. When they had the option to comfort the minority and give them a little hope, but that would cause damage to the majority, the city would and with diseases and crimes, right? But these people still chose their own happiness while the child suffers rather than saving the child and getting damaged a bit, right? At the point in which these citizens chose to live like this, we think that it is the citizens' responsibility to at least keep living in that country for the sacrifices that they've made in the sacrifices that the child had made in order to live a happy life, right? For the citizens to live a happy life. If they walk away, this means that they have wasted the child's sacrifice. In this world, as the information slide said, the sacrifice of the child is unavoidable because the citizens have chosen to live with it, right? When the children are never allowed to leave the city anyways and leave like the underworld anyways, it's better to make the best out of it, we think. And walking away does not save the child. Not walking away doesn't mean that we'll be able to save the child either. But walking away is the worst act that you could possibly take as a citizen, which has no impact and is an act of just escaping from the reality, right? We believe that when government said there are no impact or worth the child's sacrifice, on the other hand, on opposition side, at least we would get to like make the worth of the child's sacrifice that we did, right? If there was a way to save the child, we would be very happy to take it. However, this is not possible on either sides, right? Because the citizens have agreed to live on like this. When this is the case, we think that the best we could do is to acknowledge these child's big sacrifice. So I'll explain what would happen to if you walked away, and what would happen in world government side. Through this mechanism. One, citizens have sacrificed the child in the basement for their better life, right? Citizens were afraid of the diseases and crimes that might spread if they comforted the child. We understand that, and that sacrificing the child is unavoidable, right? But secondly, at the point in which they decided to sacrifice the child, the citizens would be able to live a happy life, a safe life, a life without diseases, crimes, and other bad things. That's good. But thirdly, in government's world, they're saying that the two people that those people would walk away, right? And as it stated on the info slide, walking away means to leave the country. We believe that the fact that sacrificing the child is inevitable, it is better to at least live in that country, being thankful and acknowledging the child for the sacrifices that they have made for the city to function well, right? What we are trying to say through this mechanism is that if we abandon and leave the city in which the child has sacrificed for the city's happiness, being the citizen of that country, we think that it is very irresponsible for them to walk away. The child is a part of the city, right? The city in which these citizens live in only function when the child is being sacrificed. When this is the world that you live in, if you leave the country, it would lead to wasting the sacrifice that the child was forced to do for that country. Moving on to my winning. Government side said that it's fine to run away from the reality that a child is suffering from the majority. However, we acknowledge this. We think that it's fair to acknowledge the sacrifice, right? I have told you again and again that the only thing we could do for this for this child's sacrifice is to acknowledge them and don't forget them. Which is what the government said is likely to do when they walk away from that country, right? This is a much better impact that we could bring up as side opposition. So moving on to my impact. The impact is that the child sacrifice will be worth, right? Sacrificing the child equals to us sacrificing a member of that country. The society, the city of the country only stands on the premise that the child gets sacrificed, right? Because if the child doesn't get sacrificed, if we comfort them, that means that there will be diseases and other bad things spreading out through the society. The country will very likely to be collapsed if someone comforts a child, right? This will cause lots of harm, and millions of people in that country would die because of disease, or millions of people would get harmed because of those bad things spreading through the cities. When this is the case, when this is the case, we believe that the least we could do is to acknowledge the child for getting sacrificed. The city you live in only stands if the child gets sacrificed. We believe that if they walk away, that will be equal to wasting the child's sacrifice for that country, right? This is why we're so proud to propose. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the second speaker from the opposition side for their speech. Now I'd like to call on the third speaker from the government proposition side.
I'm the third speaker for proposition. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I'll take verbal POIs. Okay. If I have everyone's attention, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So in this speech, I'll be doing three main things. Firstly, I'll be giving a few rebuttals to side opposition. Secondly, I'll do clash analysis. And lastly, I'll tell you why we, as side proposition, take this debate home. So allow me to start my speech with a few rebuttals. The first speaker said that walking away from Omelas is an act of pure selfishness. However, we believe that this is actually an act of bravery because the whole point of walking away isn't just to run away from the whole situation. It's to prove a point that that you as a citizen of Omelas don't want to live in a world with such immoral practices. Also, Amelas is a great city with no diseases and no crime. It's basically a dream world. If you think that people are so selfish, then what's the incentive to walk away from Amelas, from the brilliant Amelas when you don't know what's waiting for you in the desert? That we believe that the act of selfishness is to actually stay in Amelas because that means you just want to benefit yourself and stay in the city so that you can get all the benefits while you're not caring for the child at all. More rebuttals will be incorporated in my clashes. So now moving on to clash analysis. So the first clash of this debate is which side is helping the child that is getting tortured more. Opposition says that staying in Omelas is offering a chance to create change. However, I'd like to reframe the debate, right? Opposition thinks that by staying in Amelas, it means that people will choose to fight for change and fight for the child and try to stop the child from getting tortured. However, the truth is that no one will help. Uh, and that the truth is that no one will help. And because the rule and norm in Omelas is that even though they know that this child is getting tortured at all times, no one will that you're not supposed to help so that you can stay in this brilliant world. So obviously no one will want to be the one who makes the change and sacrifices everyone's happiness for one kid. People who decide to stay will eventually rationalizes the suffering of the child and chooses to do nothing. Staying also enables the status quo. Every single person who stays in Omelas knows that the child is suffering, yet no one acts or tries to make any change at all. The whole entire structure of the structure and framework of Omelas and the fact that the city will stay with no crime and no disease because is based on the fact that nobody wants to help the child and the child will continue suffering for eternity. So people staying in Omelas is actually what is keeping the child trapped. Even if even if, as opposition say, people are staying in Amelas with good intentions and because they want to help the child, they're actually sustaining the system that is hurting the child. And walking away is the only visible rejection of child suffering. In Amelas, since no one is helping, what we propose, which is walking away, shows that this system and immoral practices are not okay, and it shows that it shows the refusal to accept the terms of the society. Opposition says over and over again that we are simply not doing anything to help the child, but it's not like they are doing anything either on their side of the house. Although on our side, walking away does not directly free the child from their suffering. It breaks the illusion that everyone who is living in Amelas is actually okay with it. Um, um, and and actually, on our side, if you walk away, it could actually free the child because when one person walks away, one brave person makes the choice to walk away, it could lead to more people following and more people walking away. And with this, it builds pressure on Amela's moral foundation. When more people refuse to accept the trade-off of the child suffering for everyone's happiness, it pushes for change. Before I continue, are there any POIs? 3, 2, 1. Oh, okay. So, assuming that there's no POIs, I will now continue. So there are three premises to this clash, which is why walking away is the right thing to do, right? So number one, walking away does a lot more than staying. We have already shown I've already shown that in the clash that I've been saying because by saying that staying sustains the torture system, and that walking away is the only visible rejection of the injustice that is happening in MLS, and that walking away could create pressure that could possibly destabilize the structure over time. Walking away is the first action and the first real attempt to saving the child. Um, Premise number two. Opposition says over and over again that we don't have any outcome by walking away, but we say that by walking away, it's not only about the outcomes, but it's about refusal to follow these immoral practices. By staying and doing nothing, you're essentially normalizing the fact that this child is being tortured, and you're showing your approval for the system. And um, I like to flip opposition's argument by saying that people in their world are actually being even more selfish because they only care about themselves and they only want to stay in this brilliant world where they will never get harmed. While by walking away, you're showing that you're brave because you're willing to sacrifice your life to you're willing to sacrifice your life by walking away and showing your refusal to participate. In a world where the system is designed to normalize cruelty, the most ethical act is to just reject that normalization, even if that cost requires you to sacrifice your comfort um or sacrifice something. The last premise is that if you walk away, you have to take a personal toll, which proves moral integrity. When you walk away, it's not an easy thing. You have to sacrifice a lot of things, and like the info side states, you don't know what's in that desert. So by walking away, you're basically walking into the unknown without knowing what's in front of you, and there could be no city in that desert. So this clearly isn't an act of selfishness, and it isn't an act, and you aren't being coward. It's courage. By walking away, you're showing that you're willing to lose everything so that you don't gain it at the cost of someone else's pain. So lastly, why do we win this debate? Opposition says over and over again that walking away is the worst option in this scenario, and they have no mechanization and nothing to prove this except that the fact that they're saying that there's no impact of walking away. However, staying in MLS not only has no impact, but by doing this, you're not even trying to make change. In our world, at least by walking away, it shows your refusal to take part of this program. And even if there's no change on either side of this debate, um, whether it is the child, we win this debate for two things. Firstly, the possibility of when enough people leave, like possibly a majority, there is a chance that this city will stop functioning, which means, or the system crumbles, which means that the child will stop be not be tortured anymore. And even if in the worst case scenario that this doesn't happen, at least these citizens are making a stance towards the city that is clearly not moral, that it is clearly very immoral. So, in conclusion, from what we have told you today, this is why I believe that the motion should stand and that we take this debate home. Never been more proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, third proposition speaker. Let's now call on the third opposition speaker.
Hi, my name is Rory. My pronouns are she, her. I'd like POIs verbally. Sorry, let me get my timer ready. Judge and honorable judge and audience. Boss, team opposition wins this debate today because team proposition has unfortunately spent a futile 30 minutes walking around in circles, making unfounded claims without mechanisms. But all we heard was the echo of our own arguments being validated. I have two main flashpoints in today's debate, and before that, I'd like to do a bit of characterization. But now let me get into my speech. Yeah. So firstly, so I have two main touch points in my speech today. Firstly, um, does walking away have an impact? And secondly, is staying the morally right thing to do? So onto my first before I move into my first flashpoint, I'd like to win this debate through like characterization. So firstly, that it's been a problem on both sides. It's been unclear, like, do these people have an incentive to walk away in the first place? You know, and they offered that we don't have an incentive, while like they ironically also did not offer any incentive. But I am here to offer like clarify the characterization and offer an incentive as to why these people will not leave because they feel things like guilt, or because they want to leave the child, or because they want to challenge the system. If these people even leave at all, like occasionally, it's likely because of like personal, like positive reasons. So why is this? We say this because we say that any incentive to leave would be for selfish reasons anyways, because in the motion it's stated that there is like no like negative emotion, there is no like there is no form of sorrow, so there's obviously like no regret or no guilt or like no negative emotion, no strong negative emotion to push these people out and trying to challenge the system in the first place. And it also states in the motion all citizens have agreed to living here. So this means even occasionally, if when people walk out, it's going to be likely for selfish reasons. Like maybe a citizen, for example, has a hobby of like of a bizarre hobby of like hiking and exploration, and maybe they just want to explore what's outside the gates, right? It's usually going to be like personal profit incentivized reasons instead of selfish reasons like how they want to reject the system and save the kid in the basement. And they have offered no incentive or no mechanism as to why like they would have an incentive that revolves around the child in the first place. So we take this point through characterization, and it's okay to say that any incentive to leave with is selfish. And I will later say why this selfishness is outweighed by like the majority good in my second flashpoint. So moving on to my first flashpoint for today, does walking away have an impact? AKA, does walking away actually save the child or have a good impact on the child? we say that again, since it doesn't have any concrete impact on the proposition side, because any incentive to leave would be for selfish reasons, and since citizens have all agreed to be that, like have all agreed to stay in the thing and have no incentive they have no selfless incentive to leave, and since the people who leave do not come back to like try to convince the people to change their incentive, like this is wrong, guys, this is morally wrong, because they obviously cannot come back because it states like they kind of like walk into the unknown. We say that there will be no like process or mechanism whatsoever for these people to actually change their minds, and at best, like for the people living in the city, and if they even notice that people have left, it's probably going to be like dismissed, like, oh, you know, like Jessica left last week, you know, like good for her, I'm just going to keep living my best life here where I have no struggles, you know, haha, bye bye. So it's going to be like, it's going to have very little impact compared to like the suffering to our like positive impact on the majority. And because yes, like if we take proposition on their strongest point, if we are generous and take them on their strongest point, even if, you know, it shows that it's not okay, will it be actually enough to create change. We think that because of like lack of impact and because there is no incentive, as I have proved, for the whole system to change in the first place, if everyone has like the same like just like the same incentive to stay, there's no going to be later there's going to be no force to push them out. So even if there is some kind of like recognition, like we think that the proposition side cannot challenge the system enough to reach the delta that overturns this dystopian structure and actually leaves an impact. So this means that on their side, people will leave and the child will just keep suffering and the system will never change and it will stay dystopian. And we recognize that the same might be on our side. So, but the second clash, we win this first clash point, which neutralizes their argument and also creates the foundation for our second clash point. And this second crucial clash point is why we win. So moving on to my second clash point, it's saying the morally right thing to do. Firstly, I'd like to start by saying that team opposition acknowledges that this world is a dystopia. It is built off children suffering. Oh, and thank you to the proposition team for that very passionate illustration of the child suffering. And we recognize this, we understand this, but we think that we, like as debaters in this very Zoom room right now, we can only do that because we live on planet Earth. In this motion on like whatever island or like dystopian world these people are living on, there is no incentive for people to want to rebel and save the child because, like I said, everyone is happy. There is no sorrow and no guilt. So in dystopia, the most morally right thing to do, the most morally right thing that people are able to do is to stay and make the most out of the child's sacrifice. So I have two reasons why this is like a plausible argument. So firstly, we think that like there's a bit of weighing. So like I said, there's like this debate comes down to whether like self-preservation or like selfishness should weighs more than like the efficiency or like the benefit of the minority. We think that the benefit of the minority is the only justifiable thing here because we say that it is okay for this or like it's the only morally right thing to do to allow this small child to be sacrificed for the majority because let's imagine the counterfactual where the child is where the child is comforted. This means, like my second and first speaker said, that millions of more people are going to be subject to the same suffering that the child in the basement is born into. They are going to be born into this suffering because of the death and disease and famine that is unleashed upon the world when the child is comforted. So compared to the really severe negative, terrible world that would arise by saving the child, we think that we would take this world where most people are happy, and that is worth more than the other world. Sorry. So if proposition wants to talk about justice today for the child, the most morally right thing to do is to make their sacrifice worth it and to make most of their lives by living good lives that the child could not live. And so we acknowledge because we come out on top in this dystopian world through why it's justified to prioritize the majority, we believe we have won this debate and all their arguments are nullified. Thank you. Or just destroyed. Yeah, thank you. We urge you to oppose.
Thank you, third opposition speaker. Let's now call on opposition.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The government side fails at the point in which they put their bravery over the sacrifice of the child. So, one clarification before I move on to my speech. We never said that people not walking away will cause action for reform. We said that people will try to live their daily life to the fullest, remembering about the child's sacrifice and acknowledging it. And my whip speaker talked about walking away in her speech, and so I will be talking mainly about the child and main arguments made by two sides in my speech. So what are the two main arguments of government side and why we win? First, they talked about changing the systems. Two responses to this. My first speech and my second speaker told you that this is unrealistic. Government has failed to mechanize why this house, one person walking away is unique to the occasional people that walked away, that like the motion states. This is poorly mechanized and does not stand. B. Let's say we take government's characterization of people that don't walk away. Government side says that they are people with a corrupt mentality and agree with the societal value that it is fine to risk this child for the majority. They are selfish people, they claim. Then why would a change in the system exist in the first place? Because if these people are all selfish and agree with the societal value that it's fine to risk the child, then there would obviously be no reform at all. Their characterization of people not walking away mitigates and shows that the advantage that they show in their world will evidently not happen. Second, they talked about walking away as bravery. We say that this is not very important to this debate because what happens to the child? The child is the most vulnerable actor, the one suffering the most. They need to be acknowledged. And they need to be their sacrifices should not be wasted, should not be in vain. The child's suffering is the prerequisite for talking about when walking or even walking away. This debate needs to be about the child and what's best for not wasting their sacrifice. So which side acknowledges and doesn't waste the child's inevitable sacrifice? So government side has never said much about the child. They just said that there might be a reform in the system and that people walking away are brave individuals. We say that before we even talk about this bravery, we say that this child is the most important actor. We need to make sure that their lives are not lives, their sacrifices are not in vain. They're suffering. The government side has clearly stated how much of despair they're in. And we say that this strengthens our point on why we value children more than bravery of walking away or anything. And on opposition side, we have told you that we will make sure that child is not forgotten because they see it they see people going to the underground in their daily lives more if they don't walk away. So government side has also not engaged to our first point about people not walking away, remembering the child and leading better lives because they will know that a child is suffering. And they know that they should not waste the child's unavoidable suffering. They have not engaged in this and say that this point, and we say that this point uniquely still stands on opposition side. So we don't waste children's lives. The most important actor in this debate, and we make sure that people live to the fullest. If there is no much solvency in the child's situation on both sides of the house, we say that it is our responsibility to make sure that the child is never forgotten and their sacrifices are not in vain. We also have a unique point that they never engaged enough on, and we take this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, opposition reply. Let's now call on for opposition reply.
If I have everyone's attention, I'll start my speech in 3, 2. Judge, the moment opposition said that it is selfish for people to leave almost and how we are wasting these children's lives, they already lost this debate. Opposition spent their entire speech talking about how they will make the best out of the sacrifice the child made. The opposition's argument is all about the results, making almost a utopia, but they ignore the deeper harm of accepting injustice as a foundation. When you stay and make the best of the children's suffering, you're saying it's okay to let one person suffer for the majority's gain. Furthermore, this child never made the decision to make a sacrifice. A sacrifice involves a willingness to volunteer yourself for the benefit of others. However, this child was never given this choice to sacrifice or not sacrifice themselves, as they were automatically put into this terrible position without any contemplation. This is what makes this extremely inhumane. Opposition also said that the city only functions when the child is being sacrificed. This only proves our point further. The rebuttal showed that the child's suffering isn't a must. It's a rule people made. In this case, sacrificing a child for the benefit of Omelas. This supports our argument that it's wrong to let a child suffer for the happiness of others. If sacrifice isn't necessary, then staying in Almas means accepting a cruel choice when you don't have to. Walking away proves our point that you shouldn't let a child suffer for your joy, because there's another way. The city can change its rules to be fair. By leaving, you're saying no to a system that hurts a child for no real reason, which matches our stance that this suffering is wrong and should be stopped. Opposition also says that there wouldn't be a reform in our system even if these people walk away. The opposition, but this is wrong. Walking away can put real pressure on the city to change. If lots of people leave Almas, the city might struggle to keep going with a few citizens left to support it. An example of this is a school where many students stop showing up because they don't like it due to a bad rule. The school might have to change the rule in order to get them back. In Almas, walking away could shrink the city so much that it has to rethink its system in order to survive, like freeing this child or finding a new way to be happy without the suffering of others. This shows that walking away isn't useless, and it's the way to push for reform, even if it doesn't happen right away. Now, I will be comparing the best case and worst case scenarios in both worlds. Firstly, in opposition's best case scenario, the city of Almas continues to thrive like it is currently, and the citizens continue to enjoy the best food, infrastructure, and resources. However, all of this comes at the sacrifice of an innocent child who must be chained up on a wall, suffering the utmost misery a human can endure. In our worst case scenario, after the citizens walk away from Almas, the child will be free, but at the cost of Almas. The city would crumble and will return to its normal state, where disease, famine will consume the city. Judge, as you can see, even in our worst case scenario, it still outweighs the best possible outcome that opposition can provide you. Opposition is only able to offer you an amazing life, but at the cost of the suffering of an innocent child, as well as the guilt that you will carry for the rest of your life. In our world, we aren't able to offer you the same heavenly and sorrowless society, but we can offer you a guilt-free life and a life where you can look at yourself in the mirror and see someone with some basic human dignity. Proposition's world simply just cannot provide you any of this. In conclusion, after everything sad proposition has told you today, it is clear that the motion should stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Proposition Reply. Thank you, debaters. You may now virtually cross the house, and that ends the grand finals of this year's amateur WSDC. You may virtually cross the house. And wait for few minutes as we confer. The judges would confer. For the judges, we should go to room 2. We'll be back for the announcements later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, Ankit, Omer, room 2.